Hello everyone and welcome back to the kitchen. Now up to this point in the series, we've not actually done any real cooking. We've talked about how to set up your kitchen and how to improve your workflow. So for today's episode, I'm going to demonstrate a dish that I think shows some basic beginner techniques very well. Now if you master these techniques, it will definitely improve your cooking journey. Today we're going to be cooking a dish. This is a spaghetti bolognese, and I'm going to be adding a local touch to this with a freshly made sambal from scratch. Right, in this bowl here, I've got shallots, fresh red chili, some lemongrass, some galangal or blue ginger, and I've got a little bit of fresh turmeric also. Now the key thing about a sambal made from scratch is that you want to pull out all this flavor and cook it down low and slow for a long time. So this demonstrates a couple of things. First, how to prepare your aromatics and vegetables for blending, as well as how to cook and control the heat, as well as keep things moving in a pan so that you are able to pull out flavor without burning them. Starting with the lemongrass, you're going to give it a bit of a bash with the back of your knife. This helps to remove some of the fibers outside and it helps to release some of that aromatic oil. So this already smells like a spa. After you give the lemongrass a bit of a bash, discard the outside, the fibrous bits, and cut off the base. And what you want to see here is this part, right? You want to make sure that's all kind of slightly more bashed up. Now that these are all bashed up, I'm going to give them a mince. So today I'm using a chef's knife to mince all this stuff up. And you ask, what is a chef's knife? And how do I cut things with a knife? Alright, so a chef's knife is basically a longish knife, and most versions have a rounded base. Now this rounded base is so that you can rock the knife across a board. The next thing you will see me doing is the way I hold the knife. So I pinch the blade with my index finger and my thumb, and the remainder 3 fingers wrap around the handle. One of the things you want to avoid doing is putting your index finger on the top of the blade, like this. Now this gives you the false assurance that you can control the blade and press down on it. This means the blade rotates and it goes in places you don't want it to go. So always try and have your thumb and index finger pinching the blade. Second thing you see me doing here on the board is, if I need to get things off a board, don't scrape with your sharp blade down. Keep your blade close to the board and scoop the items up this way. If you need to clean a board or you need to scrape across the board, use the back of your knife so you avoid abusing your sharp edge on the blade. Next, I have me some fresh chilies. Now with chilies, you can remove the seeds. For a sambal here, I don't want it too spicy. I don't want that much kick. I'm a bit of a lightweight when it comes to spice, so a lot of the spice flavor comes from the seeds. How do you remove the seeds? You cut off the top and you give your chili a bit of a twirl like this. Doing this dislodges the seeds and everything falls out. Now rather than hold your items out with your fingers splayed and chopping like that, what we do in the kitchen is we curl our fingers in, presenting only the knuckles to the blade. So at best, if you do cut yourself, you skin your knuckles, not a big deal, versus cutting off the tips of your fingers, getting into a much worse accident. So you can see the difference between doing this, versus this, shing. Why the claw? The claw allows you to control the food item. I can keep my blade in tandem with my knuckle, and this is what happens. Rocking the knife, I bring it closer to my finger, and the knife is always in contact with my knuckles. I can rock my knuckles backwards. That way, I'm always in control and I always know how thick my end result is as I'm cutting. Okay, a little bit faster this time, but same technique. So I'm going to be blending all of this stuff up today. So everything I'm adding into this, I want to get into a relatively small size. I don't need to mince it, but I need to have it relatively even so that the blender blades can do its job. Next things I'm going to add galangal or blue ginger, nice and aromatic here. Some turmeric. Now shallots are like baby onions and they have the most aromatic, sweetest flavor. I think they They taste even better than red or yellow onions. I'm not gonna get these too fine. They're all going into the food processor anyway. And finally, some garlic. Right, on to blending. I might have filled this a little bit full. We'll see how this goes. Add a bit of oil to help everything get a bit runny. Give that a bit of a stir, see how that's going. It's alright. Everything's sort of sitting down. I'm gonna add just a tad of bit of water in there. Help everything get a bit loose. And a little bit more oil. That's about the consistency that I want. Now I can add in my dried chilies. So these are dried chilies that have been soaked in hot water. Just gonna remove the tops. And they too have seeds that need to sometimes be removed. Alright, let's cut these chilies up. Just adding the dried chilies to the food processor. Alright, we're good to go. Alright, we're gonna saute this sambal and get it to reduce. Just a little bit of oil in the pan. Don't forget you put oil inside as you are mixing already, so this will have a fair bit of oil inside as well as you cook it down. So this is a low and slow process. You want to get this to a sort of a saute. You're not really jumping around a pan so much as you are constantly stirring every couple of minutes. In we go. Right, so we're gonna get this to simmer and reduce, and this orange color will darken and become more intense. The flavors will become more intense too, and all that moisture and liquid will come out as steam. This can take up to about an hour, this process. In the meantime, I'm gonna be sauteing off our beef as we make our bolognese sauce. Remember though, you don't want your heat too high. The whole point of this is low and slow extraction of flavor. Alright, gonna let you sit there for a while. Okay, with the minced beef, what we're gonna do is we're gonna brown this before we start to combine it with the rest of the ingredients for the bolognese sauce. And I'm gonna teach you how to brown meat in a pan. That basically means on relatively high heat. With a small amount of meat in the pan, you're achieving what is called a Maillard reaction. This is that browning on the surface of the meats that develops texture and gives you a lot of flavor. Now, if you don't develop this browning, you're gonna be losing easily 50–60% of the flavor that you can potentially pull out. So we're gonna show you how to do that right now. Right, the key thing about browning is you want a large enough pan that you can brown a good amount of meat, but you don't want to overcrowd it. The minute you put cold, raw meat into a pan, it loses moisture. Now, if you put too much of it into a pan, instead of browning, what you get is steaming. All right? So you want a large pan and not too much meat going in at once. My pan looks nice and hot now. The oil's all over the place. Very good. And I'm gonna start with maybe a third of the meat that I have. I'm gonna spread this out. Look at all that moisture coming off the beef. Now you can see, as I'm cooking this beef in a pan, I've got this lovely brown stuff that develops on the bottom of the pan. This is called the fond. This is tasty stuff. This is good stuff. And we want to keep this in the bottom of the pan because we're going to be using this pan to make our bolognese sauce. Meat's nice and brown. You can see the color development there. It's not just gray, right? It's got a little bit of these crunchy brown bits. This all comes out for the time being right now. All right, next batch of meat goes in. When you're sauteing meats and you want to get them nice and brown, you're looking at a medium to high heat. And you want to keep the meat moving around in the pan so that it actually doesn't stick and burn, especially if the heat is kind of high. Sambal's looking a bit dry. I'm gonna give that a little bit more oil so that it can loosen up. Okay, next batch of beef is good. Meat's nicely browned. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut up my aromatics for my bolognese. What do I have here in this bowl? I have 2 sticks of celery, I have 3 carrots, a little bit of garlic, and some red onion. These are your basic components for a bolognese. What I'm going to be doing is hand cutting all this to the precise dimension that I want. And this is the time when the technique to cut is important. Why? Because I need everything to be the right size so it cooks consistently. Now some bits are larger and some bits are smaller. The cooking times before they get soft and squishy and lose all their wonderful flavor to the sauce will differ, which is not a great thing. Furthermore, if you have bits that are too large and too small in someone's mouth, you realize that it's very jarring. It's like a big piece, small piece. You don't want that. You want everything even. You want everything as homogeneous as possible. Okay, so cut it in half. And I'm going to use the knife tip to pull this into strips. Now because I made those strips that were all even in cross-section, as I go across and dice these now, everything is a nice even size, which means they will caramelize and saute and cook down at the same speed. Okay, quick moment here to take a look at the sambal. So you see that the amount of stuff in my pan has decreased very fast because a lot of the moisture came out. The color is also deepening, and I'm very glad this is well on its way to getting to where I want it. Soon I will add in the sugar as well as the asam and cook that down further. Alright, carrots. Now what I like to do with carrots, because I kind of rolly things, is take off a slit so that they stop rolling and I can cut thick slices out of the carrot. Now what I do once I have the thick slices, I lay them out and I cut bars out of them. The same bars that I got with my celery just now, I now have with my carrot. Everything is nice and even in a nice dice. Right, I'm liking the color of my sambal. I'm gonna put in my tamarind. This is gonna give it a bit of fruitiness and a bit of acid. And to give it some of that well-rounded flavor, I've got a little bit of gula melaka here. So that's going to slowly melt down as I keep stirring that. And already you can see the color darkening and getting nice and deep and intense like this. I like this. Now that a lot of the moisture has come out of the sambal, this is the point where you need to start to eyeball your pan a little bit more. Now you want to watch this so that it doesn't burn. And this is one of the key techniques of sautéing. You need to understand whether or not your item is going to cook in the next 5 minutes or it's going to take another half an hour. But knowing this allows me to go and do other stuff and then come back to it. So I'm reasonably assured that this won't turn into a pan of blackened bitter stuff. If I know it needs babying, which this pan needs right now, I have to watch it slowly. Right, this is a basic straight up sambal. You can add things in here like fish sauce, you can add dried prawn, you can add even prawn paste, various bunch of things that you can put in here. What I'm going to be doing is just salting this gently, because ultimately this flavor is going to go into our bolognese sauce. So nothing too complicated. Now I want you to look at the color and the texture of this, from that very bright orange stuff now to this darkened, tasty and caramelized batch of sambal. I estimate I can take this for another 10 to 15 minutes, at which point I will have to take it off the heat because there's no more moisture for it to remove, and the flavors have concentrated and it's at its peak sort of taste already. Eyeballing a sauteed dish like this takes a little bit of experience, but my suggestion is for you to cook as many times as you can so that you get a feel of how long something is going to take to cook. Right, next up, onions. Keep either the head or the root end of the onion intact. So I'm cutting down like this. I'm not cutting through the onion. I'm just getting the tip through it, like that. Now, when I run the knife through the onion, you will find that I get very nice, even pieces and a nice, even dice. Now, what do you do at the ends? You can just go through them very quickly and practically no waste. Alright, I think my sambal is done. I'm going to take this off the heat. Now, it took a bit of time, but it's definitely worth it. All this flavor, I can smell it. I'm going to grab myself a bit of a taste. Just the way I like it. Not too spicy, relatively sweet. All the flavor of the galangal and the turmeric, as well as the shallots. Yum. Finally in there with some garlic. So, sofrito here. I've got red onion, I've got carrot, and I've got celery, as well as garlic. I'm gonna saute this off in a pan. The same pan that I had with my beef. Now all this fond is going to go together with the Sofrito vegetables, and that flavor is going to be locked into the rest of my sauce. Quick tip, if you're not sure whether your oil is hot enough or not, take a little bit of what you're going to cook and throw it into the pan. If you see little bubbles, and you hear the simmering, let it go for a bit more. Don't forget, whatever you throw into the pan drops the pan temperature almost instantly. You want the pan to be quite hot so that when you throw everything in, it retains some of that temperature, that base temperature. So I'm at a medium level heat right now, and you can hear this constant sizzling. This is perfect for a saute. Again, I'm trying to get as much of this moisture out as possible. So very quickly, you're going to see more and more water vapor coming out of this pan. And because everything is so small and so finely cut, you want to keep jumping it around the pan so that all the surfaces cook evenly. As this gets going, I'm going to make sure my aromatics sweat. And what this means is, you can hear that? They lose their water content. Flavors intensify, much like the sambal just now. After which, I will then proceed to add in the rest of my ingredients. And here's the fun thing. Take a look at the bottom of this pan. Now I haven't done anything to it, I haven't added any liquid to it. But because there's moisture and water and all these little aromatic vegetables in the pan, all of a sudden, the fond is gone. The pan base is clean again. Looking at all the edges of the vegetables, everything is still like a 90-degree sort of sharp edge. And that to me tells me that my sofrito, this base, is not yet fully cooked. It's gonna take a while longer till all of them sort of wilt and soften. I'm gonna add a pinch of dried oregano here so that we can develop some flavor. And I'm also going to salt these aromatics because I want to pull out more moisture. I want all that water vapor to come out. Right, some tips to know that you're doing this right. First, nothing sticking to the bottom of the pan. The base is clean, no vegetables are sticking there. And next, number 2, I can start to see my celery and my onion softening and it's glistening. This is called sweating. As it softens, it loses more moisture, the flavors intensify. Bear in mind, you need to use a little bit of oil to get this effect. If you don't have enough oil in the pan, what happens is it can't transfer the heat to the vegetables and you end up getting sort of a steaming slash burning effect. Okay, now I'm using my wooden spoon to give this a bit of a punch through. I'm trying to feel for bits that are a little bit hard, and I'm getting a fair amount of resistance from the carrots still. So the carrots haven't quite softened up. My onions, my celery, getting there. Need more time for the carrots. So what are tin tomatoes like? They're miles better than some of the local fresh tomatoes that we get in Singapore. But the important thing is they're harvested when they're ripe. And then they're tinned, so there's a lot of flavor. Yes, they're a little bit soft, nothing like a fresh tomato. But for the purposes of a sauce, I want that flavor. I don't need that kind of crisp texture. I want them to be soft and savory and sweet and full of depth. Alright, looking at this pan, my sofrito has cooked down substantially already. And the base of my pan is starting to develop this fond again. If you look at it, all the brown bits in the bottom of the pan, that's when I know it's starting to caramelize the outside of whatever's in the pan. Now if you look at it, carrots' edges are slightly softer. My onion and my celery is completely soft and very transparent and translucent. This looks tasty. It looks like everything is sweating down. And at this point when I smell, I'm getting deeper flavor and I'm starting to smell the sweetness of the onions. Right, so first part of adding the tomato stuff to a bolognese is tomato paste. 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. And one tip here, something I like to do, I like to saute the tomato paste with the sofrito for 1 or 2 minutes just to develop even more flavor before I add in the rest of the tomatoes. Right, good size fond going. Pot of tomatoes, number 1, going in. Tomatoes 2, going in as well. So once I've added the tomatoes in, there's a lot of liquid in there. I want this to slowly come to a simmer. And I want to again clean the bottom of the pan from all the lovely caramelization we had with the sofrito. So a little bit more liquid coming out into the sauce from the tomatoes, which is great. Now my beef, the beef that I had browned previously, all of this goes into the pan. In you go, my friends. Now this stage of the cooking is gonna take up to an hour and a half. Now, if you wish, you can bring this even further. Some people I know cook bolognese for 12, 24 hours, and you can if you control your heat and you know how you're extracting all that flavor. So it's been about an hour, and I'm gonna take a look at my sauce now. This has been simmering on low. So the sauce is coming together very nicely. A lot of the excess moisture has evaporated. So this is all concentrated flavor. You can see how every piece is almost sort of blending into the sauce. So I promised a twist, and this is what I'm gonna do. That sambal that I made, the one that's not too spicy, just the way I like it, I'm going to add a good dollop of this into my bolognese sauce. What this is gonna do is it's gonna brighten the flavors a little bit. It's gonna add a whole bunch of aromatics, and it will add a little bit of spice and a little bit of kick. I'm really enjoying that flavor. I'm gonna go all in with the rest of the sambal. Right, only a couple more things to do. I've got my water boiling here. Remember that you want to give it a good salting, but I'm not gonna add oil to my pasta water. Why? Most people think that I need the oil in my pasta water to prevent my pasta from sticking together. This is actually false. What you need to do is to combine your pasta and your sauce as soon as possible so the pasta can continue to absorb some of that sauce. Now, if you're serving pasta and sauce separately, then the pasta does clump up, and that's when you will need to oil it. But remember, when you oil your pasta, what happens? The sauce cannot stick to the pasta. So I personally don't prefer that method. I like to cook my pasta in salted water and then finish it in the pasta sauce. Right, water is boiling, time to throw the pasta in. This is just a spaghetti number 3 to be precise. How do you open a pack of pasta? Really simple, I'll show you a quick tip. Grab it like this and then pasta's out. Pasta goes into the water. Pasta is just about al dente. I think it's a little bit under. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna finish the pasta inside my pot of sauce. The pasta continues to absorb all that flavor because it still needs a bit of moisture to soften up. So because we didn't add oil to the pasta, the surface of the pasta now is hungry and it's starchy and it wants to pick up more sauce. So you'll see now as I keep stirring this, the surface of the pasta will instantly take on the color of the sauce and it will adhere nicely. Look how the sauce is adhering to every strand of the pasta. It's nice and glistening. You see this shiny texture across every strand of pasta. And that's because the pasta has continued to absorb the sauce. All that surface has continued to attract the sauce. If you had oiled the pasta, this wouldn't be happening right now. Everything will sort of be sliding off the pasta. This is called the chiffonade cut. What this means is to turn it into ribbons. It also means to loosely chop leaves up. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sort of stack all these leaves together loosely. And then I'm gonna sort of roll these together before running my knife through them briefly. Right, nice thin strips of Italian parsley. I'm gonna take this whole batch, I'm gonna throw it into my pot. Now to finish this with a good stir, nothing left to do besides plate up and garnish this with some cheese. Look at that. It's a beautiful bowl, great for a party, great for a family. This will feed maybe 4 people or 3 if you're especially hungry like me. This is a spaghetti bolognese with sambal. I can't wait to tuck into this right now. That's all we have for you this episode for How to Kitchen. We demonstrated today some really fun, useful beginner techniques in one of my favorite pasta dishes. Upcoming, I've got even more tasty things I'm gonna cook for you in the following episodes. So we'll see you next episode. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. If you wanna get a notification every time we put up a new video, hit the bell below. Alternatively, you can download our app and you can watch our videos there. I'll see you in the kitchen again for next episode.